welcome to Colleagues Getting Coffee. My name's Annelies James and I am joined today by Bertie from Virtual Umbrella. What is it you do?
So we run a boutique agency, so like a very small, very specialised agency that works specifically with companies trying to use or working in the immersive technology space.
Okay.
So virtual reality, augmented reality, those kind of things really.
This is a super interesting field, isn't it? Because it seems so future.
Yeah, it seems to a lot of people, they watch things like Ready Player One and they go, oh, the future's going to be amazing, and they don't realise that a lot of it's already happening today.
Oh, okay, that's interesting. So what things would you say are happening right now that people don't think are happening?
So there's really amazing stuff happening, and a lot of it is either not known to the general public because they either don't need to know or because it's just not very interesting to them. So things like big companies and big construction firms, for example, are using virtual reality to teach their staff health and safety training. So as opposed to, doing like a big like immersive theatre style workshop or having to sit there reading a document and doing all this, or doing like learning environments online. They can put the headset on, they can take the controllers, and they can scale towers. It's teaching them all these health and safety things in a brand new way that's much more immersive. And that sounds a bit cliche for immersive technology.
I think it's the same with like, I obviously used to work at Selly University, and they did the same with like boats, and so they'd actually train students to navigate boats, and they'd actually have sort of all sorts of virtual environments, just like you said. So you're actually just taking a lot of the risk factor out for people, and allowing, like, they do it for pilots as well, don't they, actually?
Yeah, so that's what flight simulators essentially do. But it's like that, but they found that the retention rate for using virtual reality is something like 2 times higher. Oh, okay. So that people remember that information, they retain it for a lot longer, which means there's more chance of that sticking in their long-term memory. So stuff like that is
So are those
amazing.
The sorts of companies that you work with then, or what companies do you work with?
We work with all sorts really. We work with big brands, we work with big agencies, we do work with smaller virtual reality developers. So we work with a company who's making construction and engineering applications like aimed at learning and development, which is why it's an example that I use, because it's something I see almost every day when I'm working with them. But things like working with the Philharmonia Orchestra, taking a 360-degree experience of an orchestra and taking that around art institutions and cultural institutions around the world, and showing people who might not ever think of classical music and giving them an opportunity to see it and experience it in a way that they probably wouldn't have ever chosen to or wanted to in the past.
I love it. You're giving people an opportunity to just have new experiences, and actually I feel like people are kind of limited often in their circle of experience, aren't they? So it's quite nice to give people that chance to witness other things outside of their comfort zone, maybe, or challenges them, or...
Yeah, it's a case of, for a lot of people, it's accessibility, like you say. It's they might have thought about like classical music or the orchestra, but they might not be able to afford £60 a ticket for a seat. Whereas if we do it for free and it's part of something at the South Bank Centre, or it's at the Helsinki Art Museum at the moment, and it's a free experience, people can come into the museum for free, or they can go into the South Bank Centre for free and they can try it.
That's amazing. How do you think VR is going to change business? Do you think there's... Because you've already noticed a digital shift. Everything's online now, everything's accessible all the time. What do you think is going to happen because of VR?
No one really knows for sure. People kind of make guesstimations about what they think is going to happen. But the things that are really cool, which are really going to change businesses, are virtual environments. So there's an application called Virtual Desktop, which essentially allows you to create like a computer desktop all the way around you, so you've got all this extra space, and then you can invite other people in, and you could be in London, they could be in Korea. I don't know why they'd be awake at a working hour, but they can essentially like appear next to you, and you can observe the same screen together. So you can work on problems together. If you're a coder, you can collaborate to create stuff. If you're like having just a standard like catch-up meeting or something. You can pull up like a progress chart on the desktop in front of you, and then you can both share that, or you can do what people use at the moment, and they just like play games together.
So it's interesting you mentioned games. Obviously you mentioned Ready Player One.
Yeah.
Ready Player One it seems kind of scary, like a scary reality for me. I think that sort of shared office space would be actually a really lovely addition to closing the gap between countries and cultures, etc. But do you think like the future shown in Ready Player One is actually achievable and or where we're going? Because it's actually kind of scary that everybody would be so detached in real life. What do you think about that?
So it's like Ready Player One is obviously, it's very theatrical, it's designed in a way to make it seem like an amazing, different place in the future. But I think in reality, like you can't get rid of human contact. Like there has to be, like nothing can kind of get in the way of that or compensate for that still. So people might wear headsets, they might use virtual reality headsets, but I think that's only going to be for the purpose of if they want to move to a different environment. If they want to be in a different space, then they put on a headset. What's more likely to really impact our day-to-day is mixed reality and augmented reality. So things like holding your phone up and having directions shown in front of you. So not like Google Maps where it says turn right on this street, but holding your phone up and having an arrow or a big green line that you follow.
I need that in my life, I think, particularly in my car.
So things like that. Or there's a really, really interesting application being developed by a bloke in Manchester whose name I can't remember, I'm really sorry. And he's creating an app so that if you go to the supermarket, it knows where you are by your location. You say, I'm after milk, and it will direct you through that store to milk, and it will identify milk.
This is time saving.
It's time saving, and it also means that you're not or you're less likely to spend your money on other things, like the way that supermarkets are obviously psychologically designed to encourage you to go through certain aisles and things like that. So it will save time and it will save you money.
I like it. I think as long as we can maintain human contact and human interaction, and that is our absolute core, then all of these additional things, so digital, virtual, whatever, really add to the human experience. But I think if there's ever a shift change where it just tips over, then that could be problematic for...
Well, it's a case of you're layering on top of the real world versus going to a different world, like going to a virtual world. And there are times where each application is relevant. If it's an entertainment thing, going to a virtual world works. If it's a workplace, it might be a virtual workplace, then putting a VR headset on works. But if it's just your normal day-to-day life, then you're just going to want to have essentially lenses coming on top and adding layers to the world as it is now. Okay,
so fear factor around VR, a little bit uncalled for. Because actually, with all movements in the digital realm, it's kind of terrifying.
Yeah, exactly. Everything's scary to begin with.
Yeah. So a good example of that is like the internet.
Yeah, exactly. It's a case of it's invented, it's adopted mainly by businesses and by governments, and then eventually that kind of adoption trickles down because everyone who uses it is a normal person, and they become used to it. Their peers and colleagues become used to it, and then suddenly it's just in the general public's use.
Well, also human beings are just hungry, aren't they? They're hungry for more. So technical advancements or information. So it just, you can't stop progress, can you?
No, exactly. You always want a faster phone. You always want more computing power. These are the kind of things that people just they crave. As soon as they get used to the normal, they need the next best thing.
Well, also people have a complete breakdown if Wi-Fi doesn't work, don't they?
Yeah.
So,
which is totally understandable.
Well, it is actually totally understandable. I would have a complete meltdown. Okay, so you've actually worked now in Virtual Umbrella. You set it up 3 years ago?
3.5 years ago.
3.5 years ago. So what happened? How did you start? What was the journey behind that?
So it started off as massive procrastination, really. So I was at university, I was in my final year, and I was doing my dissertation, whilst also working for a PR company and also working for a games company. So I was kind of doing 2 internships and then also doing a dissertation at the same time.
Yeah.
Thought, what's a better thing to do than start a business at that time, right?
Well, why not? Yeah.
Clearly not
Sounds
busy.
Perfect.
So as part of my internship with this games company, we created a thing called Southwest VR, which was the first UK virtual reality conference.
Okay. And
this was born out of the fact that my boss at the time was really interested in virtual reality. It just started coming around, and the company, the games company as a whole, had started creating virtual reality applications for. They started working on their own game in VR as like an internal research and development project, and they started getting clients. So big businesses coming to them going, can we hire you to create this virtual reality experience for us? So they realized there's really something here. And by having a conference, they kind of give other people the chance to learn about this too. They can meet other people in the space also doing it, and it also establishes them as a leader at the same time.
Yeah.
So I was there working on this. Sammy, who I run the business with, she was also there. And when we were there, we realized that there was this really amazing opportunity in that people were creating awesome VR applications and experiences. Like back then, this was all really, really basic. Like we're talking like that was like silent film era, like in terms of how early on it was.
Okay.
But people were making these really amazing things, and no one else knew about it. No one knew what was going on or what other people were doing or what other people were up to. And we saw this opportunity to let the developers keep developing amazing stuff and let us try and market that for them and try and help them get it out there. So things like help them with their Kickstarter projects, help them run their social media, help them get their websites up and running, let them focus on finishing their games and doing the cool stuff. But we obviously met a lot of people in the industry doing this. We met almost everyone who was active in the UK and the US industry at this time when it was all really early on. And then due to that, we had some people come to us going, you know people, right? You know people in this industry. Can we hire you in to help us do some consultancy? And suddenly we started doing consultancy for brands and educational establishments and cultural institutions as well, on top of the marketing. So it was marketing and consultancy. And then we ended up doing events as well. So now
it just grows and grows and grows, doesn't it?
Yeah. So now we've got like those 3 kind of. We try to stop it now. We stop expanding because we end up being too busy. But it's like 3 columns: it's marketing, consultancy, and events.
But in a very specific niche.
Yeah, exactly.
Which is really powerful, actually, isn't it? Okay. So having started up, obviously 3.5 years is really actually quite well established. What would if you could go back in time 3.5 years and give yourself a piece of business advice, knowing what you know now, what would you say?
There'd be a number of things that I'd probably say. I think the first one would be consult an accountant before I do anything. So before we started the company, when we were learning, getting this all started, consult an accountant. Talk to someone who knows what they're doing. Yeah. Because we've recently engaged an accountant, like back at the start of the year, and they've just been worth their weight in gold. Like the amount of advice they've given us, the amount of time saving and stress that has been reduced for me by this is incredible.
I think though with that is that people don't always anticipate how successful they might be or that they would even need it. I mean, I've set up recently and I basically am like, no, don't need any of this because I'm like, no, it's fine, I'm just managing it by myself, but I'm sure at some stage and then you're suddenly like, oh my God, and you suddenly feel very far behind and you're like catching up.
Well, that's exactly what happened. Like at the start, I was managing it all and I was like, yeah, this is fine. Like, the only thing coming in is invoices, the only thing going out is travel. But soon you start building up, you start scaling, there's a lot more transactions, and suddenly it's like, oh, I need to do all the bookkeeping for this, but I don't know how to code things properly. I don't know what's VAT, what's not VAT, I don't understand this very well, I don't know how to file my taxes. And then
it's tricky.
Just trying to figure it all out. Yeah. And then these guys have just really made that loads easier for us.
Amazing.
That's like probably number 1. Yeah. I think would be do that.
What's number 2 then?
Number 2 would be learn to say no.
Yes. This is so funny because I'm like, yes, I completely agree with you.
Yeah, it's like I personally, I have a very big thing. I always just say yes to everything because I don't want to miss opportunities, and then the whole concept that like 90% of your success comes from turning up or saying yes to it and being there. But there has to be a point where you kind of you do that like cost benefit analysis on these decisions, like going to a conference or going and helping someone like because they've asked for it versus what else could I be doing with that time. Like a lot of the time, if someone's asking for a favour, it means you essentially giving up your free time. Yeah. And if you're really stressed or you've got a lot on, then your free time is a lot more valuable. You need to use that to unwind and kind of decompress a bit.
I think that's very, very important for startups, that they don't leave themselves enough breathing space to actually even think about the stuff around what they're doing. They're just sort of running in circles and running at things, but actually never reflecting and thinking about the value.
I think the problem as well is when people do that, you become so focused on like what's going on in front of you, you forget to look around you, and you forget to like take stock of where you are. Like there's so many businesses that implode because they were too successful. It's they can't manage their cash flow versus jobs coming in, going out, and it all falls apart around them, and it's because they didn't have that. They didn't take a moment to kind of step back and take stock and have like an overhead view. And that's what your free time does. Like you're sitting on the sofa watching Netflix, but somewhere in here that's all processing and you're understanding it a lot better.
Well, also it's because of the money, isn't it? I suppose with startups you're worried about earning money, so you just think I'll just take on and on and on and on because I need to make sure I get paid.
Exactly.
But it's actually backward logic, because you end up taking more and more on, and then you're earning money in something you don't want to do, or you can't actually fulfill the promises because you've just taken on loads. No, that's interesting. Okay, so if you had a third one then, what would your third one be? Imagine going back in time.
Imagine going back in time to when I was an idiot starting a company. Now I'm just an idiot who started a company. I think the third would probably just be to appreciate it all a lot more at that time and like celebrate the small things when they happen. Like getting stressed out over tiny things because they seem like mountains at the time, and then you look back at it and you're like, oh, that was really nothing.
From your world being immersed in this, what are the coolest things you've seen around VR in this year?
This year?
It doesn't have to be one, it can be a couple of things or whatever. Just anything you've seen, you think, that has blown my mind.
I see so much that I'm kind of a bit ruined in that.
Oh yeah, because I'd sit and I'd be like, this is the best thing ever, and you'd be like, yeah.
It's all right. Okay, so number one is a client that we work with, the Philharmonia Orchestra. I managed to, after a lot of begging, convince them to take me out to South by Southwest in February. So big media, technology and like arts festival that happens in Austin. And they had a piece that was there, and it was the first time that I'd worked with them, so I didn't really know much about them at the time. All I know was that they were working there and they had taken an installation. It was called Beethoven's Fifth, and essentially you walk in. So you walk into a big square made out of wood, and inside that is a cylinder. It's a projection cylinder, so it's a big round cylinder, and there's projectors at the top that project a 360 video all the way around you. And hidden behind the screens, so hidden behind this cylinder, but inside the square, there's 36 speakers. And what they do is they basically just blast the sound like straight into the center of this cubicle. So you're in the center, and on this 360 video, you're seeing the Philharmonia Orchestra playing in New York, playing Beethoven's Fifth Symphony.
Oh my God, that sounds amazing.
Dun, 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 dun. And as that's going on, as that starts, these speakers blast that at you. And the way it's all designed, it's designed to make you feel like you're really there. So it's using spatial audio. So as you turn your head, this sound sounds different. So it's like you're really there. So as you're facing this way, and you can hear the drums behind you, you can hear the woodwinds over here, and then as you look this way, your hearing all associates and changes like it would do if you're really there.
That's amazing.
And that was pretty nuts.
That is cool. See, that would blow my mind. It sounded like you blew your mind too.
Yeah, so that was amazing.
Thank you so much for joining me.
Thank you for having me here.
Amazing. And that is Colleagues Getting Coffee. It's a wrap.